Ladies and gents, welcome to Next Level Radio. I am your host, Colby Wortman, and our mission is to tackle the biggest questions in strength and conditioning, business, investing, and everything in between. We bring to you the best people in every sector so that you, the listener, can benefit and learn from the best in the biz. Whether that is S&C or business, you can rest assured you're getting the best knowledge available. Next Level Radio continues to grow because of our listeners and our sponsors. Today we present to you Fat Fish Brewing, the official beer of Next Level Radio. Whether you're looking for a night out with family or smashing the best craft beers in the area, you will find it all at Fat Fish Brewing. Check out Fat Fish on the Large Street in Dickinson, or check them out on their website at fatfishbrewing.com. Our next sponsor, Nutridyne, a medical supplement company aimed at enhancing performance and addressing the underlying issues of disease. You will be hard-pressed to find the quality that you'll find at Nutridyne. Listeners of this podcast get 20% off all supplements. Just go to @coach_Wortman and click the Nutridyne link in our bio. Keep up with us on Instagram @coach_Wortman, on our website, nl-training.com, or keep up with us on the next episode of Next Level Radio. Now sit back, relax, and take in the mind-melting knowledge of this episode. Welcome to the newest episode of Next Level Radio. We are going down a path. How long ago was the memory on Facebook? Was it 2 years?
Yeah, so the other day I texted you.
2 years.
We had it scheduled like 2 weeks ago to do a podcast, and it was going to be 2 years to the day.
To the day.
That we were going to record, so.
It's pretty sweet, dude. I'm glad it worked out now. We've made it through Snowmageddon, and it's going very well, but it's really cool. I've talked about having repeat offenders on the podcast, and you are the original repeat offender. And originally, Next Level Radio, or the NLX2 Podcast, when we first started it, started in a need of one, COVID happened. We wanted to have good, deep conversations. And then two, it kind of involved in the athlete side. Like, hey, these athletes are getting stripped. Yep. We want to give them the opportunity to possibly get scholarships. So today we have Taylor Kraenzel. It's been a very, very cool ride from 2 years ago till now, and just kind of introduce yourself, and then we'll just take it there.
Yeah, so like Colby said, my name's Taylor Kraenzel. 2 years ago, Colby and I met over, discussing some logos and some branding for his personal brand and also the Iron Chapel. So I was doing graphic design work. A lot has happened in that 2 years. We started the podcast. My wife and I ended up selling our house and moving away for a year. So we'll dive into that. But it's been kind of a wild ride because our first episode we ever recorded was with our friend Seth Morkirky as well. And we were right in the heat of things locking down, So it's kind of crazy. This last couple days, we were locked in our house because of Snowmageddon. Mm-hmm. And it kind of had that same feel. So it's fun to jump back into the podcast room and just discuss what's happened over that course of time. Because I remember us having a line in that first episode saying something good was going to come out of COVID. Maybe not for everyone, but for us personally, we felt, we could use this, and it fueled us for these last 2 years. So I'm excited to dive in.
I think it did. I honestly, and now that you bring that up, I forgot about that. Now that you bring that up, we did like something good, something of substance will happen from this, and I think a lot of growth for people. Obviously, economy and all this stuff, it's kind of in shambles right now, but personally, we can make some things happen, and I think that jump started. You were just starting into the real estate side, just getting into it, and I think that time period of a lull kind of jump-started you into that.
For sure.
Jump-started us into the podcast, jump-started the business. I mean, it was a very scary time in that like in the moment, we don't know what to do with it, but it kind of got us to where we're at today, man,
Yeah, I 100% agree, because that time where, it was like 15 days to slow the spread. It turned into 700 some days to slow the spread. But really, that 15 days gave me enough time to figure out a new career path because I wasn't satisfied in my current situation. I wasn't satisfied with the income that I was making, things like that. And so it actually happened over a conversation at the brew here in town. Just Seth,
where all good
Seth
conversations happen.
Yes, Seth and I were talking over a cup of coffee, which we did 100 times before. But he talked about wanting to get into the real estate realm someday, and I had never really personally thought of that.
Yeah,
I knew I liked it, but I never really thought about I didn't even know what it took to become a real estate agent.
Yeah,
turns out not that much. It
yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
take that much.
You got to pass the test. You got to have a little bit prerequisite, but then you get thrown into the fire. And usually, realtors getting to the point of being a registered real estate agent, it's those first few months, the first 6 to 12 months, you get thrown into the fire. People are asking you questions, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, real estate, to put it simply, is kind of the wild, wild west when you really think about jobs that have high income potential, but a low barrier of entry. So you basically can get in with 4 months of classwork. You can take it all online. It's super simple if you just study for the test, all that, and then you're thrown into the fire where, you have people asking you about different land, legal situations for land, or I've had experience with people that the husband had a divorce, didn't ever remove his wife's name from the land. So I've had to get in contact with attorneys over my first year of real estate, things like that. And you find out real quickly that this isn't as easy as people make it look. It's not all that glamorous, walking through houses and doing the videos on Instagram that you see.
Yeah.
There's a ton of back information to every.
And there's a lot of back work, a lot of back paperwork, a lot of back communications. And I was having a conversation with, I was doing kind of an interview thing, and they asked, what do you think the most important thing is in your industry? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, all right, I'll come back to that, but I think the most important thing in every industry is communication.
Yeah,
being able to effectively communicate. So you're a real estate agent, finding common ground with that person, that goes a long way. Hey, I know Billy Bob, and you know Billy Bob, boom, that's a connection, Small stuff like that. And I was talking to Brett Bartholomew, who's a huge strength coach in this world, and he's made conscious coaching, it's called.
Okay.
And he went from the side of programming X, Y's, and Z's to we need to effectively communicate, because if we can't communicate, the program doesn't matter, And so if you can't effectively communicate, it doesn't matter how good the deal is, You have to be able to come to a common denominator with that person.
Yeah, I think any industry, it's communication, whether it's my dad's business, which is a sign company, whether it's your business, training athletes, it's communication, because as soon as you have a breakdown in communication, things get forgot about, and that's when you run into trouble as an agent or whatever your career is. You run into trouble when you don't have effective communication.
Yeah.
So, going back to the start of getting into the real estate industry, really the first real thing that I ever did in the real estate industry was purchase my own house. And I had not a great experience, to be honest. I won't name names of agents or anything like that.
I have the same concept with my first one.
But yeah, you learn quickly that not every agent, is in it for the right reasons. Like I said, the low barrier of entry gets a lot of people money hungry.
Yeah.
But they don't have that people side of getting into real estate. So my first transaction that when we bought our first house, Ashley and I were super young, naive, didn't have a clue about anything when it came to buying a house. And the process was super complicated. And I think that kind of fueled me as I got into real estate personally, was that I never want to be that agent that confuses those first-time home buyers and makes it a process that they never want to go through again.
Yep.
And so this was back in 2017, but come 2020, we ended up selling our house again. And I'll give the agent we used that time a shout out. Her name's Gina Warner. She works with the Real Estate Co., but she was excellent. She was just starting out, but super excellent. And that really, sparked me with jumping on with the real estate co when I first got into real estate, was because that experience, you know, and they've always put people first. And that's why I got into real estate, was I want people to, be appreciated and it to be a smooth process, because it can be a nightmare for a lot of people.
It can be a real nightmare, and a good agent can make that completely different situation. You know, like as you said, I had a negative, and it wasn't even with the real estate agent, because we had like a kind of a unique situation. We were buying this rental property from my wife's grandfather.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so we had a kind of a power of an attorney. We kind of had a central mediator that did the purchase agreement, did all that stuff, but we never needed a real estate agent because we lived in the house already. Yep. And so it was a very, on my side where it got negative was on the lending side. Okay, there was some promises made and some different changes, especially as right now these interest rates have gone crazy.
They're going nuts.
And so we were at a time when there was almost zero interest rates. I mean, just 2%, all the way till we're at like 5.25, 5.15, right, somewhere around there. And so we had a negative experience, but once you get through it, you learn so much. But you will not learn that until you go through it. Like, you have to have that experience, because without it, you're just guessing. You can do all your research, you can do all that, but you need to go through, hey, every month that this drags on, I'm going to need a pay stub. You know, like all this big different stuff that you don't know about. When you originally, you took your test, you kind of got into the real estate game, which intrigues my interest a lot. I really like that side. I'm into stock and crypto investing and stuff, but I've taken all my profits from those and plugged them straight into real estate, because that is the king. Honestly, it's one of the best investment vehicles you can get. But kind of walk us through, you take your test, you move away to Minnesota, and you buy a very cool, quaint, like cabin almost, right?
Yeah, just a cabin, 13 acres. And it even had a rundown little shack on the backside of the property too.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so that whole situation came from us selling our first home. So we were living in New England, North Dakota. Yep. And we sold that first home, and we made a little bit of profit off of it. The one thing I knew about real estate when I had never dove into real estate or anything was always buy low and sell high, and try to find something that has equity, instant equity in it. Yep. So we knew that we were buying a house that when we did sell it, we'd have some profit, and we wanted to roll that over. And we were actually planning on building a house. So back when COVID hit and we got those stimulus checks, I think everyone remembers the stimmies. We rolled that into buying just a cheap lot in New England. And so we took that stimulus check, bought some land, and we were planning on to build once we sold our house. Well, everyone knows what happened with the lumber prices, all that stuff.
Craziness.
And so we had sold our house, and we were like thinking about building, except our materials list had almost doubled. So at that point, we didn't know what we were going to do, because we didn't have any houses we wanted to buy in New England. There was nothing on the market that intrigued us. We weren't going to build. And so we started just like, we ended up moving into an RV for 2 months. And it was like August, September, and then a little bit of October, we lived in this RV. And at that point, we knew we had to do something, because it was either that or we were going back and living with my parents. And we didn't want to ever have to go through that process again. You know, once you're out, we were like, we're not ever moving back in with the parents or anything like that. So we ended up actually just starting to look at random places on the map and seeing where we could find some real estate that we could, add some value to, and then eventually resell it or something. And I had a friend moving to Bemidji, Minnesota. His name's Caleb Fritz, and he was getting married to a girl that actually worked at the college my wife ended up coaching at over there. And that's how all the connections started being built. And once we started looking at real estate over there, we realized like this was a gold mine, like a hidden gem. Because all these properties were so, I don't know if they were deflated, you want to say, but they were so low that you could buy like a house on 13 acres for under $150,000.
Wow.
Over there, which we all know over here, that's like a $400,000 to $500,000 house at least. So when we saw that, we wanted to pull the trigger instantly, because we knew that this might be the only time we ever get this opportunity to take an adventure. lots of things. So we ended up getting in like this situation where we put an offer on this house. We went over the day we saw it, like left at like 3 a.m., got there at like 1, 2 o'clock and looked at the house, put an offer in that day, went over asking price because we knew like what it was valued, wanted to get it, ended up getting a call the next day. They went with a different offer. And come to find out, the reason they went with the other offer was because they waived the inspection. They had a way lower cost, but this lady that was selling was so hesitant of having an inspection because it wasn't in the best shape. I'll just be honest. But anyway, so we ended up staying in as a backup offer and ended up getting into like a bidding war 3 weeks later on a different house while still having this backup offer in place. And we were driving the price up of this other house like by, I don't know, $20,000 over asking price. And we were still in a bidding war. And our agent finally calls us and says, I just got news, like the offer's falling through on this other house. Do you still want it?
Oh.
And we were like, hell yeah, we want it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Are you kidding me? So we pulled out of this other house we were in a bidding war on, ended up getting the house we originally put an offer on. Dang. And that's where it all kind of took off, you know? So we ended up getting this awesome house, not in great shape, but we went there with a mission of making enough money that first, 6 months to 8 months of like living there where we could put money into this house and flip it. And then we didn't know what we would do after that. We thought we'd live there for at least 5 years, honestly.
Well, sweet spot, awesome land. I mean,
yeah, it was perfect. I mean, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't do it any other way. I mean, we didn't have one negative thing to say about like our time in Minnesota. But the real thing that made me nervous going over there was like Ashley was just finishing up her master's degree. She had a coaching job that didn't pay very well because it was a small college. And I basically didn't know a single person besides my friend in Bemidji. And real estate is all about knowing people.
Yes.
So I knew if we went over there, there's a high chance of failure. That's just plain and simple. There's a high chance that, we might be selling this house in 3 months and heading home. Yep. Because we went over there. I mean, we had like $13,000 in our bank account after buying this house. So $13,000 will get you, in a couple months. Like you can live off that for probably 6 months maybe.
But if nothing's coming in.
But if nothing comes in, you're draining that pretty quickly. And so really what happened was I just started grinding on real estate. Nothing was taken off for like the first 4 months. Like I didn't have a single sale in the first 4 months. And then finally this agent that we were working, like that was in my office, he actually ended up having some lung surgeries and stuff, like a tumor removed. And he was out of commission basically from showing properties. And so he asked me if I'd show, properties for him for a little while until he recovered.
Yeah.
And so I showed this property for him to this guy, just a little like $50,000 property, flip property. So it wasn't going to be much because I was going to make like 25% off of his commission. But I went and showed it, and Ashley ended up coming with me to that showing. And when I was showing it, I found out that the guy I was showing it to was actually a principal of a local Christian a Christian high school in town, a Christian school, I should say. And Ashley was with, and he was like telling me the story about how they need a gym teacher and they need a 6th grade teacher and they need him like immediately.
Oh, wow.
And Ashley had worked in a school system before, but her master's is in nutrition. And so it's not like a teaching degree. But I said, hey, my wife might be interested in this job.
Doesn't matter.
You should talk to her, because a Christian school, they can, as long as you have a degree, they can work with you.
Oh, yeah.
And within a week, she had this teaching job. And so
I did not know that.
No, so that's where everything started. Was I showed a house to this principal. He ended up offering her a job basically on the spot. He had her come in the next following Monday, and they needed a teacher within 6 days because it was on winter break and they were just going back in. So they were screwed if they didn't have someone. And so it was a blessing all the way around for her, for him, for everyone. And that's how we actually started making an income over there. And we were like, okay, we can do this. And so right after that, I just started grinding, showing properties. I was going to the office at 6 a.m. Every single morning. And I took so many calls. Floor calls are the bread and butter of a new real estate agent.
Okay.
Basically, you just sit in the office and you have a schedule of days that is your day to take the phone calls. But if you get there before everyone shows up, any calls that come in
Are yours.
So I got a ton of calls that first couple weeks of doing that. And there's a ton of luck I had involved in getting calls and things like that. But my first house sale was in April. I think that was the first one I closed on. That was my personal closing. Mm-hmm. And like after that, I just had I had 5 transactions at a time throughout the summer. And then, we were able to flip our house that way. Yeah. So I made enough money in 3 months to put all of that into our house.
Very cool.
And we flipped it. That whole summer was basically spent just flipping our house.
Dang. The thing that you didn't bring up that it's kudos to you is you had nothing secured when you went there. There was nothing secured there. You drove up there, you put an offer on the house, but that, as you know, that doesn't guarantee anything, especially in this market. That does not guarantee anything. You had no source of income besides maybe a small source of income from her coaching. Yep. You had nothing guaranteed. And that's the big moment that people don't realize that can make or break. And Mark Cuban talks about it. He's like, people don't realize, they think successful people are making all these successful decisions and all these different things. He said it takes one. It's one decision to get you to the next decision and then the next decision. Luka Hocevar, he's a huge, I had him on the podcast probably a year ago, huge gym owner in Seattle. And he talks about life being this game. You have to beat this boss, and then you get an extra heart, and then you get a little bit extra mushrooms like Mario.
Exactly.
And then you go to the next one. And then you finally get to Bowser. And that's when, that's this cascading events of these decisions, And it's really cool to see that you were able just to take that leap, because that's the leap that nobody takes. And not saying it's a bad thing, but they continue to work at the grocery store. They continue to stay here where it's comfortable. It wasn't comfortable leaving at 3 a.m. and going into the abyss,
Yeah.
But
you got to do it too. And really, I'd go as far to say as real estate in general, it didn't save my life, but it changed it forever.
Drastically.
Moving to Minnesota changed Ashley's on my trajectory forever. And I'll dive into just a little story to give you a backstory of what led up to us even getting to this point of not having that fear. So when I was, working just a W-2 job, just working for my dad's business, and it was a sign company, which I'm actually coming back to now, totally different perspective now. But when I was working there, I was just putting in my time. And I got to the point where I wasn't happy even showing up there, just because I knew there's got to be more to life. But there was one year where Ashley, she was grinding at working at New England school, and I stayed home pretty much the whole year and just subbed and did a lot of odd jobs. But I personally, it's probably my most shameful thing I've ever done to my family. But we ran our bank account down to there was a point where we got under $1,000 in our bank account, and I never I don't talk about it a lot or anything because I don't even think I can comprehend that we got that close. And it's a little embarrassing, just saying it, but we got to this point where we were going to do a little remodel on our house, and I had 25 boards of shiplap loaded up in New England when we were going to do this remodel. And I realized, I don't know if I pay for this, I don't know if I can make sure we have our mortgage payment for this month and stuff. And so I ended up having to unload this whole thing of shiplap and put it back. And really, what I'm trying to get out of this is to say that we had it calculated where we knew Ashley was about to start coaching it. It was at the end of summer. We knew she'd start teaching it or doing some schoolwork. And I was going to start working on my dad's business more and more. But we ran it down so low. And the only thing that really changed that was it first started with a budget. So we started budgeting, and we started taking on all these coaching jobs and stuff and doing these things that we knew we just had to grind. And so within 6 months, we were back up to $9,000.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. And once COVID hit, we were feeling good about our finances, but we didn't know what the heck we were going to do after that, because that kind of set us back to thinking we need to figure something new out. And that's when we bought a little bit of land, And so that was my first transaction with real estate since we bought
up on top of the hill.
Yep, up on that hill.
Yep.
Yep. And so that was our first transaction in real estate. So that actually set us back $5,000, which is cheap land.
Yeah.
But we were back down to like $4,000 at that point. And then we were like, let's just sell our house and figure out. And I don't know why we were even thinking about building at that point, because this was going to be the first time we actually had some money in our bank account, since we had gotten married. And anyways, so once we found out we couldn't build, we did the whole Minnesota thing and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you this story because we went from, at the end of 2019, we had like a couple thousand in our bank account, to 2020, we sold our house and had like a $30,000 profit. So most money we've had in a while. And then doing the whole thing in Minnesota and coming back, I want to make it clear so like everyone knows, like we had the best time of our lives there. And we didn't have to come back with our tail tucked between our legs. We ended up going from that $1,000 to when we sold our house in Minnesota, we had over $100,000 that we were coming back with. Yep. And that's where we started to where we came. And real estate changed our lives because of, just that little bit of, that 15 days to slow the spread turned into me getting my real estate license, learning about real estate investing, learning about flipping homes. And we taught ourselves pretty much everything. I thank Ashley's parents for that because they came to Minnesota and taught us a lot of the trades stuff? And stuff. Yeah. Yep. But really, that's where we came from. And with real estate, I mean, we came back, knowing so much more than we ever did when we were living in North Dakota the first time. And it was just that little thing that we had to do was like just commit to, taking a risk.
Yeah.
If we wouldn't have taken a risk, I don't know where we would have been. But it was that one risk where we said, we're going to go there with no experience, no knowledge I was 2 months into real estate.
Yeah.
When we
That's
moved
as
to Minnesota.
green as it gets.
Yeah. And I just tried to grind, and I acted like I knew more than I did most of the time. And
you got to do that sometimes.
Sometimes you just have to look the part and then let everything else fall into place.
Yeah.
It's jumping into the water without knowing how to swim and just learning.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the story I wanted, to emphasize with real estate investing. Because I know, like, I've tried other types of investing, but real estate is the only thing that's really made sense to me.
Yeah.
Where I can actually, like, I don't think I cracked the code, but I understand, like, there's elements of it. If you can get the right house, buy the right deal, you can make money off of real estate almost every time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. I think it's instinctual. But for us men, especially married men, it's instinctual. I wouldn't even call it ego. It's in our DNA that when we don't feel like we're providing the life that we want, it's a hard thing to handle, and it's hard to swallow. Oh. And it's something that that decision of having less than $1,000 in your bank account, not knowing if you're going to pay the mortgage, is what propelled you. Like it's an uncomfortable situation to go through, but it's very necessary, hugely necessary, dude. And I applaud you for that, because that's something that not a lot of people can go through and like come out on the other side.
Yeah, it was either sink or swim at that point. And, we were definitely, I think it's the athlete nature, but you're not going to give up.
Yeah.
And so, and during that time, you're never going to run back to your parents. Like that was never an option in
That's last resort or no resort,
Yeah, I couldn't get myself to feel like that's the right move. So, really, it's just, like I said, real estate overall changed our lives, like changed our trajectory to now where we, the motivation, the momentum we've created in that 1 year really, really sparked everything we're doing now. And I guess this is the best the best perspective I've ever had in my life on just everything.
Yeah.
And so, and getting older, you start to, I think your brain starts to develop, or it finishes developing when you're like 26, 27. And I think some things just clicked for me, but
you
for
can
a while,
hit your stride.
Yeah. For a while there, I think I was just spinning my tires, and that's nothing negative about anything I was doing before. It just wasn't fulfilling the way I thought, like, once I hit the mid-20s would be.
Yep.
And now I'm to the point where I think I appreciate things a little bit differently now.
Yeah. And all the guys that get into either flipping obviously the BRRRR method, or even just getting in and having rental properties, it takes the first deal. And like people don't realize, because it's a monotonous process to buy a house, especially from a bank. You're getting the financing for this. It is a strenuous process. If you can get private money, by all means, try to get some private money.
For sure.
But doing that one deal is what's going to get you the capital for the next, and get you the capital for the next. The hard part is people don't take that first step because they think about the traditional perspective of buying a house. I need 20% down. Okay, well, if that's a $100,000 house, I know what that price tag is. Or if it's $200,000 house, there's so many different ways to skin the cat.
There is.
When we went on our first, because we have to technically live in it for 12 months, but it's going to be more like 6 to 9, what we're going to live in ours. We're going to do the renovations in the bottom, get out, redo it. That's what we're going to try to do. So we went with the USDA loan.
Yeah, we started with that one too.
Yeah. It worked great. Honestly, how we got it all structured, because it's a family-owned house, we pretty much got, I think it was called like an equity credit kind of thing. So we had to put zero down. And people think like the traditional, and I would have thought this even a few years ago, the traditional mindset of, I put zero down, well, my monthly mortgage is going to be insane. Yeah. It's not the case. There's different ways around it. And so we got in a position where we have instant equity in the house because we were able to get a good deal on it.
For sure.
And long story short, I think the short-term trajectory is get the basement finished. It's completely blank. Awesome. Yeah. Like I'm fine with that. I want to, I think it's the man in us that we want to like make things work and like build things like we want it. Yep. Get somebody in there trustworthy to rent while we're still in there, and then get out and have the whole thing rented out.
Yeah.
It's a quarter block from the college, which is awesome.
Yeah, awesome. You're going to rent that out consistently.
I think so. And from friends and people I see on TikTok and Instagram and all that, I can have a pretty vetted application process to where I don't want the freshman college kid moving there, because you and I were both freshmen before.
Yeah, that equals holes in the walls.
Yes, beer cans everywhere, spilt beer. I mean, that's stains, not my thing. Yeah. It's not my thing. So, Dickinson has really ramped up their master's program. I know from my personally, if my perspective from being an undergraduate to my master's is a completely different world. Yeah. I would take a master's student any day of the week. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, into the medical field, there's travel nurses, there's all these different things, that's what we're trying to get to, Yep. And I'm very early on it too. We closed on the property just under a month ago. So it's going well. And it awesome. Intrigues me so much. Like I just can't wait for the stock market to turn around, pull these profits and just start going.
Yeah. Gosh, it's fun, and it's fun. Real estate's fun because it's tangible. Mm-hmm. You don't have to rely on another company driving up things or anything like that. You know that what you're putting into this house is going to return. Yep. And I like that. I think maybe it's the little bit of control freak that I have, but I like that. I like that ability that I know what I'm putting into this will provide a return. Mm-hmm. So I know my work's not done in vain. I know that I'm doing something that's going to benefit, not only the person living in it, like next, but also just myself financially. Yep. So we're kind of on that same train right now where we're flipping a house right now, but we either
in Dickinson or
it's actually in New England.
England.
Yeah. And we just decided that we're going to just buy this one outright because it was just a super killer deal. Uh-huh. And then we're going to either rent it out or flip it. Yep. I think I kind of want to get into the rental area space just because I love that recurring income. Yeah. It's not the big hit of like a nice like $30,000 to $50,000 chunk, but it's that recurring $800 to $900 every month that you can roll over in, and that adds up. That's your income right there. So you can start focusing your time elsewhere. You
can have that income, but then you're getting appreciation on the house. You're getting your loan paid down. Yep. You're getting all this stuff that then 10 years down the road, you haven't paid $1 for the mortgage, and you have this property. It's so hard to beat. I think I'm down the same path as you are. I want to have that rental income, but also I see the opportunity in flipping too.
Yeah.
You know, one of my good friends and I, Jake Greff.
Okay, yeah.
Do you know Jake Greff at all?
I know the Greff name. Are they out of Mott?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I know the Greff
He owns his own electrician business.
Okay, yep.
Handyman like no other. So he's an electrician, but tiling, everything. He does everything. And so me having the connections and the communication and the background on that and some capital, him having that experience, we're looking at a few foreclosed houses.
Yeah.
And there's a few cool ones in town, but that would be just kind of a cash cow, flip it and go, you know?
Yeah.
It's just different with the market that we're in right now. And I would like to kind of hear from somebody that's much more experienced than I in that.
Let's talk about the market. Let's talk about what I came from in Minnesota to comparing it to now.
Yeah.
Because it's really, I thought it was going to be two different markets, but I'm starting to see some of the similarities. So, for example, in Minnesota, I had a listing, and it was listed for $214,000 about. And this listing in 24 hours had 8 offers on the table. And the highest one was $20,000 over asking price.
Oh my gosh.
And that became the standard throughout the last summer in Minnesota. I mean, it was when we looked at our house and things were just starting to get like that. We were so appreciative that we even got in a house because I had clients throughout the summer, and I pride myself in giving them the best advice, my clients. And I really did win a lot of offers that I was putting on the table when it was multiple offer situations. Yeah. But it was never a great feeling for them knowing they were paying 10 to 20 over the asking price.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much money you have.
No, it really doesn't. And so that was the standard for the market there. If you had listings, which they were really hard to come by no matter where you're at in the country, I think we're at the biggest housing shortage we've been in 100 years.
Yeah.
So listings were really hard to come by, but you knew that every listing was selling within that first to second day. Yep. And it's really easy for agents when they do have a lot of listings to get really complacent and just say, I'll just throw it on the market and let it sell.
Yeah.
But what I always pride myself in is always making sure my photography's top of the game. Always make sure the videos, all that stuff, the marketing, everything's top of the game, because when that market does flip, which it could, you want to be the agent that stayed steady throughout and didn't have those crappy pictures, the things that people...
rushing it.
Yeah, you know, because they could throw it on the market and it sell, whether you took one picture or took 20 professional pictures at that time. But you're also building a business, and you don't want to be the person that gets just tries to save $300 from photography or something, and then down the road, no one's going with you because you set the standard that's the way your listings look.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was kind of how it was in Minnesota, where you just knew that whatever was listed was selling, and you had to get your clients in there day one. Because if they didn't get in there day one, it was pretty much a guarantee they weren't getting the house. So that was a frustrating, but it was also kind of fun because that competitive nature, the athletic nature in me, made me get excited about going out and finding my clients' houses and making sure they were, their offers getting accepted. So that was kind of a fun challenge for me. Coming back to North Dakota, things were pretty much a lot slower throughout that same time period. Things would sit on the market, some would hit, within that first week, and some would sit on the market for 300 days. It's really... It was kind of unpredictable, but yet it didn't really fluctuate from the norm that North Dakota experienced. And the prices didn't increase the same way as all the rest of the country. So I thought coming back here, it'd actually be less frustrating, more, relaxing. You'd get your listing, you'd be able to do the professional photography, and you wouldn't have things sell within a day, so you could actually market it a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, the other day I had a listing that was priced pretty aggressively, high aggressively, not usually when I say aggressively, I mean, they're trying to sell it, but no, they priced it because they wanted to see how much they could get out of it. And it sold within 12 hours. So, and we're starting to see multiple offers. Yeah. So my guess right now would have to be there's more activity in our market just because people are coming out of winter, which we kind of got reset this week with winter.
Yeah.
But things are starting to get multiple offers. We're starting to see more aggressive buyers. And it surprises me with the interest rates. You would think it'd be the opposite, where there's less and less, but it just doesn't seem to matter right now.
Yeah.
So I would say that prices are still going to go up steady, unless there's some kind of, like, you can never predict everything. There could be a giant crash, and
a black swan event somewhere.
Who knows? But usually real estate just appreciates and it just stays steady. And that's why I like tying my money up in real estate, because, proven time and time again, it just steadily rises.
Yeah. And I think the big thing that sets apart real estate, and this, I wonder if you've done it, but my grandma is a real estate mogul in Montana. She owns, at the height of it, she owned over 50 properties, commercial, everything on the Yellowstone River. I mean, gosh, beautiful, dude, beautiful. But she lived and died on the 1031 exchange. I mean, she just sold a property, put it into the next, tying your taxes up for a later date. And I think that's what sets real estate apart, because you can't do that in stocks. You sell, that's a taxable event. There's different things that happen. You brought up, like, obviously we're in the largest shortage we've ever had, and so there's like these two trains of thoughts, like we're going to have a massive crash or we're just going to keep on kind of grinding up. And there's obviously anything could happen, but I always hear from people much smarter than myself and have got into the real estate game years ago. The best time to buy was yesterday. Like, you just got to do it. You just have to get into it, as you did.
It really, I've heard that saying a lot too. And out of every real estate agent, investor I've heard from, the biggest regret they had was not buying more real estate. Because it just doesn't seem to be one of those investments that ever, I've met people that flip houses, and flipping is a different story where you can lose money if you don't buy it at the right price. But when you're investing for the long term in real estate, it seems like everyone has been pretty satisfied with their outcome. Unless you were investing like in Arizona right before 2008 when everything crashed or something, and you lost like $100K on a house or something, you're probably going to be okay. And people did that during the oil boom too, where they, were buying houses at inflated values. 3 years later, they were trying to sell them. And they lost a bunch of money. But if they would have held on to those for 10 years, they would have seen a steady gain and they would have been fine. You have to know that real estate has to be a long game, typically, unless you're flipping houses. And
flipping the house, yes, you get that big chunk of money, but there's not the reoccurring side to it. But honestly, if you really think about it, unless, say you're a house flipper and you're buying these houses right off the bat, hand over fist, just keep on rolling them, and then a crash happens, that's really the only time that you're exposed to massive financial risk. Because if you're going to buy it, sit on it, and rent it out, it doesn't matter what the price of the house is right now. You're just kind of building it up and paying down the loan.
And rents don't really go down. I mean, in Dickinson, we've seen it, but historically, and I think we're at a level here where rents aren't super extreme. I think that, like when we first were renting an apartment, it was like $1,400 for a studio apartment out of like when we got married in 2015. You don't see that, because like a year later, it was like $650, or maybe it was even $450 to rent that same apartment. I've never seen a drop like that since. I think things are a little bit more even,
I would say.
But that when the oil was going nuts, I think people were losing their minds a little bit when it came to pricing. And it was one of those tough times where we actually moved to New England because house prices were so expensive.
Dude, you get 5 miles down this highway and it's a completely different market. Completely different. We were looking, because I love it. I think it's beautiful. My wife talked about, like, when we have kids, traveling in on that highway can kind of get dicey sometimes.
But once in a while.
Exactly. That's one case scenario, you know what I'm saying? But beautiful houses on the way to New England, man. I mean, some open land, everything. We were looking at that, and it's a completely different ballgame where you're looking 50, 60, 70% more expensive if it's in town. It's crazy.
It was cool. We were able to basically do a case study off of the house we bought in New England compared to one here, because ours was a spec home. So basically you'll see other houses that are designed exactly like it. There was one in Dickinson that was built exactly like our home. That was our first home in New England. We bought ours for like $155. That same house in Dickinson was like at $300 or close to $300. And so, and it was the same materials, same everything, just different market.
Yeah.
And it was
nuts.
a no-brainer to, start off in New England, and we ended up loving it, and that's why we're back there again.
Yep.
But which was another one of those like happy accidents. Like we just found a place that we wanted to try, and it turned out to be one of the best things we've ever done in our lives. But I think God, as long as you are taking some time to just try to listen to, the Spirit and really take time to, listen to God on what He has for your life, I think, you can really find that path.
It'll guide you more than you know. I think people get lost because they don't feel like they're being guided.
Yeah.
It's because we're not listening.
Yeah.
It happens time and time and time again, but you get this thought in your brain, hey, I wonder how Taylor Kraenzel's doing. When that thought comes in your brain, it's not just natural intuition. It's God talking to us. In the last 6 months, I've been trying to be very intentional about my thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's completely changed things. And I have one specific incident that it really changed everything for me. I was at church one day, and it was talking about like true high conviction evangelization and how that looks. And a lot of people have this perspective of, hey, I'm going to put my arm around them. They're coming to church with me. We got to get them inside the four walls. We got to do all this stuff. And how the pastor was talking, he's like, that's not true evangelization. True evangelization is, hey, you want to come over for dinner? Hey, I want to, we have a friend group. Come over and hang out on Thursday nights and watch football. And you kind of get this community built, and it's all about those thoughts that come into your head. So I had multiple times where I just kept on praying, like, God, show me who you want. Like, show me who needs you. And I just kept on praying that. And long story short, I had a college kid that was an intern for me. And he was an amazing intern, helped me out a lot, and he's just getting ready to graduate here in May. And he, in between clients, I had a client cancel, which wasn't just happenstance. I had a client cancel, and he's there with me. And he found an opportunity to kind of open up to me. And he broke down crying. Like, hey, Colby, did you know what you wanted to do when you graduated college? And he was in that spot where you don't know. There. Oh, my gosh, and it's scary. I told him, I said, I called my parents and was bawling because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And this pressure, this world. And we sat and talked for an hour and a half. And I was like, that's the person that God wants. Like, that's the person. So I've had that kid over for dinner. We've done big things that's true evangelization. We're actually 100%. Listening to the thoughts that are put in our brain, you know, because people just think that the natural human brain is what comes up with all these things. There's something behind it, dude. You know?
Oh yeah.
There's always something behind it.
Yeah. And like you said, that's what true evangelism looks like. And Ash, my wife, she's 100% on board with that's how evangelism should look, because we've went to some churches in our time where, they could have been considered cult-like or things that were a little bit weird, and, they wanted to evangelize to everyone, door knock, do all that stuff. And we didn't do any of that, but we never felt like that was true evangelism because, what do you do once they say, yeah, I'll accept Jesus as my Savior, and then you leave them?
Yeah.
There's no growth. There's no mentoring. There's no discipleship in that. And I don't know how that could be considered true evangelism when you look at, like, Jesus and, like, the following he had. And, like, he gave time to, the widow or the poor person, like the people that needed it. And that's, if you want to have the true spirit of what Jesus was like, it's like, love these people that God has set on your heart. Yeah. And, don't let them go.
Exactly.
Take care of them, be kind of a shepherd to them, especially when they're younger than you, Yep. And that question comes up from kids all the time in high schools and colleges. Like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Did you know?
And there's a lot of pressure.
So much pressure. Oh. And so my answer to them is, like, I don't know what I'm going to want to do tomorrow. I don't know what I don't think I've ever truly figured out exactly what I want to do. I just enjoy trying things. I enjoy, like, I love so many different things, and I don't want people to be put in a box where they can't explore and feel like they have to pick one thing at the age of 18, and that's what they're doing for the rest of their life. Yep. You know, and I've heard even some people say that, you know, switching your career every 10 years actually keeps people a little bit younger and keeps you more excited about life and stuff. And I'm not saying that like nurses or doctors and everything should be switching careers every 10 years, because we need those people. But when you want to enjoy life, like find a new hobby. And my hobbies tend to just be things that will make an income. I do like the grind of entrepreneurship, but find something that you enjoy and then do that. And if you don't enjoy it, you know, in 10 years from now, find something new.
Move on. Yeah. But, kind of a twofold question. But do you think, because there's two trains of thought. There's many people that are not real estate agents, that are real estate investors that make a killing, that do really well for themselves. Yep. But then there's also that other side where you can be the real estate agent and still do your investing. Do you think your preparation, your studies, your all this stuff helped a ton as you start progressing into real estate investing for yourself?
Yeah. The thing I learned being in Minnesota was almost everyone in my office, well, I would say half the people in my office were into some type of real estate investing. And I don't think I would have known the things I know now if I wouldn't have been around those people. So being a real estate agent, the paperwork, all that stuff, it helps a little bit, but it's really the encounters you have and the connections you make that can influence that investing. Yeah. So I would say that I knew a little bit about real estate investing just from, you know, Instagram reels or something like that. Yeah. But when you start seeing, there was a kid in my office who was the son of the people that own the building and the office and everything. He was 19, 20 years old. And he had got into so much real estate investing at the age of 20, and he was just buying, he bought a little trailer court, and he bought a laundromat, and then he had a couple rental properties, a fourplex. And I watched him basically, he was could have been retired if you want to, off that passive income, if you want to say that, at the age of 20. And it was kind of cool to watch because then I started realizing he's not even going that far into debt to do this. He's just finding the right deals and finding the right connections. And you do make more connections when you're in real estate, with sellers that might not want to actually list their property and they might give you first dibs, things like that. Yeah. But realistically, I never came across anything where I was just going to buy someone's house that I was going to list or anything like that. Yeah. But there's opportunities all the time when you're within a real estate office. Yeah.
So you think it's those connections. It's not per se the education building up to the test, no, but it's more that connection.
I hate to say it, but and I've heard other agents say that, but the test really doesn't prepare you for what you're gonna experience. It couldn't prepare me for that guy who had his wife on the deed where they were divorced. Exactly. And you know, when he went to sell it, they were gonna need her signature. And it could have gotten to a whole, you know, kind of battle over the profits and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And we got that worked out, but that would have never, you know, I would have never heard about that on the test really. Yeah. There's so many different things that you just don't know from just doing that. You have to go out and actually do it. Yeah. Which is kind of how I like to learn anyways. I like to learn hands-on and everything. Mm-hmm. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't know jack about real estate compared to some of the, you know, those 60, 70-year-olds in it. Yep. The only thing that I have going for me that they might not is the ambition and the time, you know, and that, and the knowledge of technology. Yeah. The knowledge of technology, that's great to bring up. That helps a lot. But I was making and watching a video the other day, and I've had my battles with addiction and that side of things. And then I've had it on the other end of business and success and all this stuff. I thought it was such a cool thing, and this is exactly what you've done. It talked about motivation. We all know is very fleeting. Yeah. It's hit or miss. We don't really have it, and everybody asks how do you stay motivated? How do you do these things day in and day out? And it brought up an awesome point. It was said, motivation equals habits. Okay, so after a while, this motivation, you keep on doing it, it equals habits. Yeah. Habits equal consistency. So now you've built this habit, and now it's a very consistent habit. Yep. And then consistency equals growth, positive or negative growth. Okay. So you take a really good decision and you learn real estate and you do all this stuff. Well, now this is just what Taylor Kraenzel does.
like this is how I'm going to be consistent. And this is what I do.
Yep.
For me, when I first got into drug addiction, it was motivation. My motivation was to fill a hole that I felt like I didn't feel loved.
Yeah.
After that, I got in a habit of doing those drugs. And then I became very consistent doing those drugs. And then I had the negative growth. That's this cycle that we all go through. And I think if we can just think about it as it's just this cycle and this decisions that we can keep on going down that'll lead to this end growth. Because a lot of people, especially with working out, a lot of people think like, oh, I need this motivation. I need to be fired up. You just need to have the habit of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like for your example, like with the drug addiction and everything, like you had that drive and that, that consistency in you all along. You just had to apply it to something,
that's exactly
like this,
it.
like
that's
what you're,
exactly it.
And that's really cool. That you can, recognize that and then, find that positive growth, because so many people have that in it. I can't name how many people are addicted to either pornography or drugs or, anything that especially guys go through. If they would just apply some of that, like they have it in them to become really consistent with something that's going to produce that positive growth.
Yep.
And I pray that they can tap into that. There's so many that don't, and they're the ones.
It's one decision, like we talked about too.
Yeah, it takes one decision.
Man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Since my outlook right now was the rental side, I told my wife we were in the same position. We wanted to build, and I was like, let's get 3 or 4 rental properties before we build. Yeah, because then that pays for our house. It's paid for
right there.
Yep. So that's very nice. But on the house flipping side, I know it's very not extensive, but you have to have your ducks in a row on the budgeting side.
Yep.
Capital expenditures, vacancies, or all this stuff on the back end that you have to put into so that it's successful. What is that process for you? How do you come across the deal and know we could make this work? Like the budgeting side of it.
So, my wife, first of all, is kind of the numbers girl.
Good.
So she definitely, and she grew up flipping houses with her parents.
Oh.
They didn't do it as a job, but they did it like any house they were in, they were always adding value to.
Awesome.
Currently, they live in a house right on the river in Idaho. Like it's a gorgeous property, but they bought it for like $200,000. And they probably put $100K into it, and now it's valued at like $8.
Oh my gosh.
Which is super awesome that they like have like that in them. But that's who I first like picked up on. Like this might be something worth looking into. Mm-hmm. As for like the budget or anything like that, you really like it. Everyone says this, but you're making your money when you buy the house. So like the deal is where you make your money. What we looked for, and we got this kind of from watching Ashley's parents, but we looked for something that had extra square footage we could add inside of it. Anytime you can add extra square footage, that's easy money right there.
Yeah, like adding a bedroom and stuff like that? Or
Yep. So what we had with our house was a full attic space that was like 8-foot ceilings. Didn't have a stairway to it. It had a ladder.
Boom.
But we had 800 extra square foot we could add up there. So we added a master bathroom, a master bedroom, and like an office space up there, which the buyers actually turned it into a nursery, which was perfect.
Yeah.
But really, that's what we were looking for, was something that we knew we could add square footage to. And we watched Ashley's parents turn a garage into an actual 2-bedroom space. And that's where we kind of got that idea from. So anytime you can add extra square footage to a house, whether it's an unfinished basement or anything like that, you're fine. If you can get it at the right cost, the right deal, you're probably going to make a really good profit off of that.
Interesting.
Because when you think about square footage, if you buy a house, say it was priced at like $130 a square foot. Now take 130 times that extra 800. And then you factor in, that it was a rundown cabin, so it was probably priced less anyways per square foot. You're looking at, you can kind of do the numbers before you actually get in the house.
Yeah, you can increase that. That's just a rough estimate of kind of where you'd be.
Yeah, and so that's how we decided to pull the trigger on this house, or the house we did. The house we're currently in, we just got it. It was an off-market deal. Okay. So we knew we were getting at a decently discounted rate. And besides that, it does have a basement that could add extra square footage if we get to that point. Mm-hmm. My wife's kind of fallen in love with the house, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And that happens every time.
Yep.
But once you start getting to that point of like going to sell it, you start doing the profit factoring and stuff like that. You're like, okay, it's probably worth selling. We'll move into something else.
And we'll love that one down the road.
Yep. Yeah. And really, we're doing it the messy way. And you're probably experiencing this where you live in the house and you flip it.
Yeah.
And you're living in drywall dust. And like, so in Minnesota, we got to enjoy our house for probably 2 months where it was almost completely done.
Okay.
So 2 months of that was actually getting to enjoy the house. But really, besides that, it was a mess and all that stuff. But I've heard from other like people that are in flipping, and they say that the living in the house and flipping it is the easiest way to get into it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to pay for an extra house outside of that house or anything like that.
Exactly.
Super easy way to do it. We're probably not going to do it going forward, like where we live in the houses when we do them. But there's a few on the market right now I'm looking at.
Yeah,
I get excited when I see something that I know I could add, potential to. And
so down the road with you having the capital that you've flipped all these houses,
yep.
would you stay in one that is finished and then flip one that you're not living in? Is kind of how you do it, or how would you?
Yeah. Honestly, we've actually talked about doing it right now, where we just buy another house on the market and then finish the one we're currently in and sell it. I think we'll probably live in this one while we flip it, and then down the road. The goal right now, which it is basically to just keep working our way up the food
ladder.
chain,
Yeah.
and you can get to a point where you have a paid off house that's like a $500,000 house in 5 years. It's always that delayed gratification that you have to look at, though.
Yep.
And can you handle living in messes, things like that? When you're in your 20s is when you should be doing some of this stuff.
Yeah.
20s and 30s.
Yep.
When you're in your 40s, you might not want to live in a mess. You might be ready to, settle down, things like that. So I really am a big advocate of, in your 20s, take the risks. In your 30s, take some risks. But like, as you get towards your 40s, that's when your investment should start,
paying
being
for themselves.
Yeah, because like in your 20s, you can recover from a financial mistake. Like Ashley and I, we recovered from and most of it was my stupidity and my just burnout, if you want to call it, which I don't really know if burnout exists. It's probably just staying in some place too long or something like that. But we recovered from it, within 2 years. You just have to have the right mindset about it, and you have to be willing to try some things, because if you don't try it, you might have that W-2 job for the rest of your life paying you $50,000 to $100,000 a year. But if you're only living for the weekend, you're probably going to be miserable at some point in your life.
Yep.
And I've heard this quote a lot, but I heard it last night just flipping through some Instagram reels, and it's set yourself up on the weekends, set your life up for the way you want it to be by using the weekends, not stay in a job and live for the weekends or something like that.
Exactly.
Use the weekends to propel yourself in.
It's something that I talked about. I made a post a while back, and it was hard to swallow right off the bat, Taylor, but once I kind of internalized it, I was okay with it.
Yeah.
But I lost a lot of friends because I didn't go to the bars on the weekends and do those things, because you're working Monday through Friday, and then there's 2 to 3 more days that are wasted, Yeah. And that's where, for us specifically in this house that we're in right now, that's where all of our work is done. I mean, my wife is super busy delivering babies and does all that stuff, and I'm super busy here. But come Friday, come Saturday, and come Snowmageddon, you're getting a lot of work done. You know?
Yeah.
That's the bread and butter of it, And I think being able to extend your work week, as long as it's a healthy relationship, I think it's fine. Because with the real estate side, it's not like you're having to go to work and be away from your wife.
No,
you and your wife get to do something together, and that's a lot of fun.
For sure,
a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. If you can, I always tell people this. I think it strengthened our relationship working together on a house. Yep. It could have ended one of two ways. You could have ended in divorce, probably working on a house with a wife, or you have a stronger relationship. And we actually embraced, the working together and learning more about each other and things like that. But you learn a lot about your spouse when you're around them, working on something that doesn't always go right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wire in a light and it doesn't turn on or something like that.
We were just doing that. We put in 9 new light fixtures in the matter of a week and a half.
Yep.
And just hammering them out.
Yep.
And we got to a ceiling fan. and wired everything perfectly.
Those are always fun.
Oh my gosh. Wired everything perfectly. I mean, I doubled and triple checked.
Yep.
This was the 9th one. So I was like, I know what I'm doing here.
For sure.
Put it in, figured it out. And I was like, it won't turn on. The light will not turn on. Long story short, you had to provide power, pull the string, and you had to make sure that the switch was on at the right time, and it ends up working out now.
Yeah.
But I had my buddy Jake Greff come over, who's an electrician.
For sure.
And he looks at it, he's like, Colby, you did everything right. And he's like, it was the remote is what it was. He's like, go click the power on the remote, then click this.
Gotcha.
I was doing this and then turning on the remote.
Yep.
He's like, dude, you wired everything right.
There
It's
you go.
Like, I'm not charging you a damn thing.
That's funny.
Like, perfect. It's those things that you don't learn until you just do it.
No,
you know?
yeah. That's, I mean, when you flip a house, you're learning pretty much everything that goes into building a house. I mean, for the most part.
Yep.
There's always some framing that you might do in an unfinished basement, things like that. So I like to say that we didn't leave a single part of the last house we did untouched.
Yeah.
You know, I was under the house because it was a crawl space and just doing a lot of things that I never thought I would be doing. Mm-hmm. But it taught us so much because I think that will probably be the hardest flip we will ever probably encounter.
Yeah.
And I probably should knock on wood because that might end up not coming true and we might have harder flips down the road. But that was probably the hardest one we could have started with because like we had to do everything. Like the whole house was basically touched by something we did. So it was fun. But
usually the quality of the flip, obviously you're still trying to get great deals, but like it starts to get in a better situation every flip.
That's your goal.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And our first goal when we moved to Minnesota was just find a house. And we were pretty set on that one because we knew the potential it had and we were right.
Yeah.
If we were wrong, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about, we would probably be coming home with our tails tucked between our legs and
exactly
probably been home 3 months after starting that flip or something. I don't know where we would be, but
I think you would just be a little bit behind of where you're at now. Cause I know you would have came back with your tails tucked and then find another opportunity.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just, you never want to say die in life. You never want to stop grinding because when you do, you're basically, the only time you fail is when you give up completely. You know, failure is a motivator for me, mainly because like you always learn something from it. Yep. And it's easy to say failure is a motivator, but like when you actually go through it and you come out on
it.
Yeah. And then come out on the other side, you realize like maybe not at the time that it was a motivator, but when you're on the other side, you look back and say, thank God that happened to me. Yeah. Because if it didn't, you know, I might just be working a W-2 job and be living for the weekend. Yeah. So
it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Crazy. Dude, I appreciate every single minute. I get to learn a lot from this too. And I kind of take mental notes. And I mean, the big thing for us is like just tangible thing that you'd said, but adding square footage to the house, you know, like if you can really do that. That's something that really changes things for you.
It does.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me, man.
Dude, I learned so much when you're on here and it's always good to catch up, dude. So I guess short midterm, you guys are obviously staying around here, New England, and starting flipping and doing all that, right?
Yeah. If anyone in New England's listening to this, I just want everyone to know that our long-term plan is to stay, you know, long-term. So I know it was tough when we left the first time. You know, there's a lot of tears shed, a lot of things like that. But we came back. A lot of the reason we came back was because we had such a good relationship with so many kids and so many people at that school. So we're here for the long term. We're here to, you know, because we want to, you know, maybe raise a family or any of those things. We see New England as being that place. We'd love to do that. So
very good.
But that's our long-term plan. Short term, I got a lot of different things going on, but we can talk about that another day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, I appreciate the time. If anybody wants to reach you on social, where would they find all that stuff for real estate?
Yeah, Instagram, I think it's just under T Kraenzel.
Yep.
On Facebook, it's like Kraenzel Realtor. Mm-hmm. And you can honestly just call me at 701-290-8426, and we'll get you set up if you want to buy a house or sell a house or,
Sweet, man.
or whatever you want to do.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, brother, and that was another episode of Next Level Radio. We will talk to you guys next week.